Anthony with the pump fake and one dribble inside to the long two, and he makes it. That's been his game his whole career. But look at him smiling. We go, my bad. The long two.
Welcome to another episode of The Long Two. I am Pete Rogers. He is Natty Wallach, and we are a Carmelo Stanthony podcast that occasionally talk fantasy basketball. Natty, how you doing today?
Howdy, and what's up, Pete? How are you?
I am good. I am, as I said, I am tired, and I think a lot of that has come from just constantly checking my phone today, knowing that shit is on the verge of just completely going down in the NBA. We've already seen some trades, which we will talk about, but I feel like the place to start on today's podcast, even though ultimately, in all likelihood, when you guys actually listen to the show, we're recording this Tuesday night, it comes out Wednesday morning, likely these maybe these rumors will be substantiated and we will actually, the Rockets will be a completely different looking team. But for now, the Rockets have James Harden, have Russell Westbrook. There are now a plethora of trade rumors going about. Harden seems to, well, we'll start with Harden. Harden rejected $50 million a year for 2 years, reportedly, and is basically pushing himself to get traded to the Nets. But also the Sixers are in it, and now reports are coming out that the Celtics are desperately trying to trade Gordon Hayward and Kemba Walker for young players and picks so that they can then make a package for Harden. So this is just, that all is happening. And then my phone, just before we started recording, Natty, my phone gives me a buzz, and Shams tweets out that there is preliminary talks between the Rockets and the Wizards for a John Wall, Russell Westbrook swap.
Really?
Really? Fucking really.
Wow.
This NBA season is I mean, this offseason is absolutely insane, and it's a month long, and it's all getting jam-packed into it. I think that if the NBA can find any way of like making this a annual thing, they definitely should, because having all of this action thrust into like 1 month is just incredible television.
Yeah, it's like the people that advocate trimming our election seasons down to just like a dead sprint 3 months, and that's all you get like for campaigning and for an election. Like that's one of the arguments in favor, because it would be nuts and just breakneck speed. This is fast, feels a little bit panicky, especially with the Bucks moves. They paid a lot for Jrue Holiday, but let's stick with Houston. The Westbrook for Wall trade sort of seems like just rearranging deck chairs.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't really move the needle too much for me, unless the Wizards know that Wall isn't as close to being healthy as they think. In which case Houston would, presumably know that too.
Right.
But the news is Harden. It's tough to say no to $50 million, even though like they offered an extension. So it would be tapped on to his already existing contract. So it's not like he said no to the next 2 years following this year. It's like added on to his already present contract. But it's still hard to say no to $50 million. $50
million. Last time I checked.
I mean, maybe it's easy. Maybe. Yeah, but I don't know. I've never been in that situation.
No one's ever offered you $50 million.
And I mean, I think there's a part of me that would just give him the finger and say, I don't need it. And Harden maybe doesn't. He'll get paid no matter what, obviously. Harden to the Nets seems like a big controversial move to a lot of people, but what it's really doing is getting another top 10 player to add to a top 10 and top 15 player, and talent tends to win out. And Harden has played with these guys before in different settings. He's also known to have complained about the style of play that the Rockets sort of fell into. D'Antoni just didn't call plays, so it's like Harden's the guy who's out there running the offense. So he does what he thinks he needs to win. having a stronger coach, stronger is the wrong word, but a more play-oriented coach, someone who's determined to spread the ball around, like presumably Nash would be,
Right.
might help Harden's change of game style, especially because it's not like Harden's dumb. Like he's one of the smartest players in the league. And there's no real reason why someone at his talent level, who has also played in a different way before, he's come off the bench before, he's played with Kevin Durant before, he's played with other high usage players before. There's no reason to think that he can't adapt like other people adapt. And this is the final thing I'll say about this for the haters. Kevin Durant hasn't made a single mistake in his basketball career. He hasn't made a single error. Why should we not trust him now? This wouldn't happen without Kevin Durant saying yes. Maybe it's happening without Kyrie saying yes. I have no idea about that. But that's always the aura around Kyrie stuff. It's, people project on him because he plays a little coy and says some not impolite, but curious things sometimes.
That's a nice way to phrase it, yes.
Well, everybody's phrasing gets distorted by the media to a certain extent.
Yes, that's true.
But Kevin Durant chose to play with Kyrie Irving, and now he's choosing to play with Harden, and I really don't know why we should doubt him. It's like when LeBron wants to play with someone, like the Schroeder trade. Like LeBron wanted to play with Dennis Schroeder. Okay, that convinces me. Sure. Get it done. He knows how to play so that he brings out the best in perimeter players. He shows it over and over and over again, LeBron does. And KD is going to be the same way. So I think the most interesting thing of this possible trade to me isn't the hate. It's that both Kevin Durant and Kyrie are coming back from injuries. So will Harden actually end up playing the most minutes on the team?
Right. And that might be the impetus that we're kind of overlooking right now, is that if you add Harden, now this load of minutes of the offense, all of that doesn't fall on a recovering KD and a recovering Kyrie shoulders. Instead, Harden could, I think that's such a good point that you brought up, is that we don't know what KD is like. Everyone, from all reports, it sounds like KD is as good as ever coming back from an Achilles, which would be extremely impressive. That is an injury. We talked about it on last week's show. That's an injury that has completely torpedoed people's careers before.
Sure.
So not an easy injury to recover from. And then for Kyrie seems like he is kind of stepped into these, he might just need to be managed throughout his career now in terms of minutes, just because he seems to always kind of have ailments or something's tweaked or something's up. That was certainly the case with his final year with the Celtics and obviously with the first year with the Nets. And so having that third star, it might be less of what people are anticipating, where it's oh my gosh, how are they going to spread the minutes? How are all these guys going to get their touches? It's well, what you might do is you might have games where it's Harden and KD play. And then you might have games where Harden and Kyrie play. And maybe you even have games where KD and Kyrie play. Especially with this, quicker season that's starting in December, you just might have games where, it might be a rotation where KD and Kyrie just don't play full games. And that's a lot. And that's, keeps Harden obviously still as the central figure. And then once you kind of get into once you get later in the season, once everyone's healthy, once they have minutes under them, and then you can kind of start seeing what these players are. But for this first season, it might be a whole season thing where you're kind of managing, especially KD. I feel like KD is the biggest commitment for the Nets. He is, when healthy, he is the best player in the NBA. I don't feel like that's a discussion. I know Giannis exists. I know LeBron still is doing it at 4,500 years old. But KD fully healthy on point is, I think, just the best player in the NBA. And that is a guy that you want to make sure is ready to go for your franchise at all times. So I think he's going to be the biggest, the biggest factor here in terms of his health. And what you said, I think he's definitely behind the scenes being if James Harden, this is the other thing too. This certainly is true with Russell Westbrook, and I feel like it is true with Harden, where it's maybe you don't love watching the way they play, you don't love their game, but every single team should want to go get James Harden if he's available. James Harden is a top 5 player in the NBA right now. And like any team would be stupid not to try to go get him. And so if he's available and he's explicitly saying, I want to be in Brooklyn, the Nets would be stupid to not like, and they all reports are showing that they're basically like, take whatever you want, like have all of our draft picks, have Karis LeVert, have fucking everyone. We don't care as long as we've got KD, Harden, and Kyrie.
The lesson that they learned from the Celtics Nets trade with Garnett and Paul Pierce is that, like, you know what? You can turn it around actually kind of quick. Like, this is Brooklyn. We can get butts in seats. People do pay attention. It's a big market. People do like it here. Harden is a warrior when it comes to games played. He's played like 77 games.
He's been
every
incredible
year.
for us in season. Yeah.
Yeah. The Devils' argument is that that's why he peters out in the playoffs, because he carries such a big load. But, you know, he'll be managed in terms of his load just by sharing. You know, like there's absolutely no doubt that people have to change how they play when they play with stars. Everybody does, even fellow stars. Like LeBron even has to change how he plays depending on the context of his team. You've seen it his entire career. Smart players can do this. There's no rule that says that Harden will make himself get traded to the Nets and then refuse to play it, you know, in a way conducive to team wins. Like that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Especially because if he is going to defer to anyone, it's going to be to someone like Kevin Durant or to LeBron, like established players who everyone sort of agrees are better. Kevin Durant is a 7-footer who can defend the best wings in the league and shoot over everybody. He can play with everyone no matter what their style is. He's already played with Harden under different circumstances in OKC, but still. So he's easy to play with, really. Harden's eclectic, Kyrie's eclectic, but that's what coaching is for. You know, like you have to – it really seems like D'Antoni didn't have a strong enough hand, and that's what ended up allowing people to get into bad habits and just sort of, you know, go in without real offensive plans. But the fact that Harden even wants out after being so successful in Houston should tell you about how he feels about the current state of that team. And again, like Harden, Kyrie, and KD are 3 top 15 players. They'll do just fine. They will make the playoffs, you know, if everyone's healthy. They'll be able to stack the rest of the team. They don't need that much. Even if the Nets do end up sending absolutely everything, like who cares? You can get dudes, it's fine. So it would also be incredible to watch. I'm really hoping that it happens because I do want Harden to be able to prove the haters wrong. He's one of the best players who's ever lived. And it's just sort of weird to blame him for everything on the Rockets when you know that the coach and the front office massage things so that could happen.
And so something has dawned on me, Natty, and it has me thinking. I am wondering,
also D'Antoni's an assistant coach.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Is Harden's problem with the Rockets did he like D'Antoni? Is he trying to go back to D'Antoni? Is D'Antoni a factor here? Like you can't ignore the fact that D'Antoni gets fired and the team that Harden is pushing to go to is the Brooklyn Nets, which ultimately obviously have KD and Kyrie. And like, yes, if you want to go play with a star or if you want yes, that is a terrific landing spot. It's in the East. You're in a big market. You're doing the best. But like, it also Mike D'Antoni is there as an assistant coach.
And Kyrie has already said, like, we're all the coaches upon the hiring of Steve Nash. Here's the thing, though. It doesn't fucking matter who else is on that team. Kevin Durant is on that team. Kevin Durant has more chips than Kyrie. Kevin Durant is a better player than James Harden. Kevin Durant is that team. If he's healthy, they will go to the playoffs and be a formidable force. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that even 90% of him, or I guess even 80%, depending on how bad the recovery is enough to make that team really, really fucking dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
But on the other hand, like, it's sort of easy just to dismiss these coaches if you're sort of all coming from a culture where, like, oh, well, I don't like this team, so I'm going to leave, or my coach hasn't told me what to do anyway. But Kevin Durant is coming from, Steve Kerr.
Right.
Like, he's coming from a team where he sees how everybody can fit together and how beautiful that can be. So I really think he's going to be the driving force for all of this. It's sort of like,
I think so too.
after LeBron left Miami, like, he knew how to make a championship team and what you needed to do. So I think this is going to look very similar to post Miami LeBron.
I think you're right. I think that maybe there wasn't that bad of a relationship between Harden and D'Antoni.
Yeah, and now the rumors are that Harden doesn't like the owner in Houston because he's a big Trump guy.
The pieces are falling together, Natty. That's what we do here on the podcast is we put the pieces together.
I mean, that would explain a few things, like the fact that Morey got the fuck out of there and was like, I want to spend time with my family. Actually, I'm moving to Philadelphia, and I'm going to try to trade for Harden right away.
Yes.
Also, Houston just traded Rob Covington. They traded him to the Trailblazers, which I'm in love with. Just 100%. Absolutely in love
100%
with that.
In on it.
And so it sort of seems like this is going to happen for Houston no matter what. Like, it doesn't – I think – if the Westbrook for Wall thing happens,
I'm here for it.
Like, I could see Houston keeping Westbrook while trading Harden, because I actually sort of feel like if Houston can get everything from Brooklyn, then Houston's roster maybe isn't that bad. Like, it's not a potent threat for the title, but it seems like it would be a playoff team. Like, there's solid to above average guys all up and down if they kept it.
See, I think if I were the Rockets, I would look and see what happened to OKC last year, where it's like you sold your pieces. I mean, mainly it was just Westbrook, but you got back Chris Paul and you had a bunch of young players, and you were like, well, let's just see what happens, and you make the playoffs, which is great, good experience and all, but then you just sell, and we'll talk about CP3. In fact, maybe this is a delightful transition into it. But then you trade CP3 to the Suns, which I am in love with. We're going to talk about that. Incredible. Phoenix Suns, jump on the bandwagon now before we run out of space. And I wonder if the Rockets are just going to be like, all right, let's just get rid of everyone. Get rid of everyone. Have a team of young, scrappy players, basically the Brooklyn Nets back when they were fun and enjoyable to root for. Have a shit ton of picks for the next 15 years, and let's bottom out and really try to find our own stars rather than clinging on to Russell Westbrook, who's going to take us maybe past the first round of the playoffs with a decent, side crew. I think it's, you don't want to be caught in that middle ground if I were the Rockets. And I just think that trading James Harden is a number one sign that you're like, we're done. We're rebuilding. Get ready, fans. And so there's no reason to keep Westbrook as any kind of we're still trying. It's like, if I were a fan, I'd be like, no, fuck it. Get rid of everyone. Get rid of Westbrook. Get rid of Harden. Get all the pieces you can. And let's just see what happens with this young ass squad as we're doing something totally different. And then we'll go from there. Because I think what OKC did that last year. They had Chris Paul. Chris Paul was much better than maybe people anticipated, and took that team to the playoffs, to the bubble. And then you're kind of like, and then what do we see this offseason? I mean, they weren't really going to keep CP3 because he moves that timeline so much when they have all those young guys. And so they traded Chris Paul, they traded Dennis Schroeder. And now let's talk about this, Natty, because the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hype train is off the fucking rails, because he is going to be, I'm calling it right now, this is the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander All-Star year. It's happening.
they're going to – this is the team that made absolutely certain that Russell Westbrook was going to win the MVP. They designed their entire fucking team around it. They will dedicate themselves to a player in a season when they know they can't win the title, just to up the value of the player. That's probably what they're going to do with SG. I mean, unless they come 100%. Out of this with another good team. And I would like to say this. When Chris Paul signed that contract on the Clippers, everybody said it was untradeable. They said the same thing about Blake Griffin's contract, too, by the way. Since then, CP3 has been traded 3 times. Westbrook's contract is not going to seem as onerous next offseason. So if Houston just keeps him this year, and maybe they have a decent year and, you know, they're sort of rearranging their team anyway, maybe they make the playoffs if they're lucky, and, you know, Westbrook gets to be a high usage player, maybe compete for the MVP again, because what the hell does Houston have to lose? And then next offseason, you get to trade him, just like Oklahoma City did with Chris Paul. Like, next offseason is going to be crazy because there's going to be a lot more movement. Some teams aren't going to get the players they want. Maybe they'll take a flyer on Russell Westbrook, who will still be a good player. You should never discount how smart the OKC front office is. I do agree that this is going to be like, they're going to do everything they can to make SGA look as good as possible, because the thing about a rebuild is you want to make the destination attractive. So it's in their interest to show the world that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is good and that people should want to come play with him. So, like, you can have all the picks in the world. If you don't do anything with them, then what are they worth? You know, like, Orlando's always picking, you know, in the lottery, like, they have good players, but it's not a destination. So OKC, go ahead.
For people who don't know, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if you were living under a rock last year or just didn't pay attention to the Oklahoma City Thunder, he good. 19 points a game, 6 boards a game, 3.5 assists a game, almost 2 stocks a game while shooting almost 50% from the field, 34% from 3. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is fucking good, and he is going to, and he now has the full reins of this offense. Like, no one else is in that backcourt who's going to, you know, monopolize any of his time. He is the guy that they are building around.
Now, that's the one danger, I think, in this, what we think is the plan, is that now, SGA is solo. Like, you're not going to have Chris Paul. You're not going to have Dennis Schroeder. You're not going to have Danilo Gallinari. You're not going to have – maybe you don't have Steven Adams. I don't know. There's a real possibility that it's too much for a still very young player. So it's not like, I do think they should do sort of like a soft rebuild. Like, don't make your team incredibly shitty and just say, all right, SGA, we'll do whatever you want. Like, you should still try to provide competent pieces around him. And I think because OKC has so many picks, that you might see them make a trade to get another good player.
Mm-hmm. Well, they got Ricky Rubio and Kelly Oubre from the Suns in that trade. I don't know. Do they need to re-sign Oubre? Is Oubre an unrestricted free agent or a restricted free agent? I think he's a restricted free agent, right? He wouldn't be able to have been traded otherwise.
You could see them packaging both Rubio and Oubre out, you know, like, because that's the thing. Like, do you want to keep good players, especially just for 1 year? Right. And Rubio's great. Rubio's a really good player, and he will help SGA.
Oubre's
Kelly
great.
Oubre, I like a lot, but it's like, you should never let someone like Oubre be the guy that holds up a trade if you can do better.
No, but I do love Kelly Oubre. I mean, he's a fantasy boyfriend of mine. Love that man.
And the other thing is that the West is so monumentally fucking lethal this coming season, presumably. So how hard does OKC want to fight for a playoff spot? Right. They surprised some people this past year, not us. We were calling it all year. But there are reasons not to tank, but just not to try as hard as maybe
Sure.
you otherwise would.
Yeah. A quick little bit of fantasy, chit chat. Obviously, I am super high on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think that he should be someone that you should be targeting in all of your drafts, just because the usage is going to be there, and he's an extremely good player. Natty, out of the Chris Paul trade specifically, then we'll talk about all the moves that the Bucks made. But out of the Chris Paul trade specifically, is there anyone else who you feel like their fantasy value got a big uptick because of it, or maybe a downtick because of it?
Let me ask you this, Pete.
Oh.
Do you think Ricky Rubio deferred to Devin Booker? I mean, Rubio isn't a scoring point guard by any means, but it's like Devin Booker was the offensive force on that team. SGA is not the same as Devin Booker. Maybe Rubio's points are going to go up. Maybe he gets more shots. Like, maybe this is actually not the worst thing in the world for this guy. So I think that CP3 and Devin Booker, that partnership will be great. It'll be sort of similar to how Chris Paul played with Harden. So I don't think it's going to be like that different from what he's shown in the past. I do think Rubio's shots could go up.
Yeah,
I don't know what to say about Oubre. I think that DeAndre Ayton is going to benefit from this. Yeah. Now, that's easy to say because it's like, yeah, well, he's a young player and he's also got more experience now, so you should assume improvement. Absolutely, for sure. But the best thing for a young big is to have a good point guard. When you have a good floor general, it just – because he will help how the team operates to such an extent that the center like doesn't have to cover as much shit, So it's like CP3 is going to make sure that Ayton gets buckets early and keeps Ayton, alive on defense. Devin Booker is going to have the best player he's ever played with, I think, right?
Yeah. I don't think
you would assume that makes him better, maybe more efficient.
Well, and maybe
the defense will improve.
Right.
Which is nice.
Yeah, and for the Ayton thing, I mean, it helps to not only have a good point guard, it also helps to have the guy who founded Lob City.
Yeah, great point.
DeAndre Ayton is going to get buckets from CP3, and he's also going to get shouted out from CP3. I feel like Ayton's going to get ridiculed and lectured a fair amount on the court. But hey, I am here for it.
Dude, but it didn't seem like anyone in the Thunder last season hated Chris Paul's guts.
No,
he might be a taskmaster, but he's at a level right now where, I mean, he's over 10 years older than the other players. They're going to see him as the point god and treat him with such respect that I think it'll work out. He's the mentor, he's Obi-Wan. They're not going to fuck with him. Maybe they'll get tired of it after a couple of years, but after 1 year, no way. They want him there.
All I'm saying is that the best team from the bubble just got better.
Fact. Hard agree. Great point.
The Suns' 2021 season is looking pretty fucking sweet.
Dude, and not for nothing, Chris Paul is the most efficient mid-range shooter in the league. He still has it. This is going to really help Mikal Bridges also, we should say, because now you have, even though Rubio could find him, obviously, and Bridges is another young player, so hopefully he's going to improve just naturally. But now that you have an offensive threat like CP3 there alongside Booker, that should open things up for Bridges a little bit more and make things easier. So the young Suns are really going to benefit from this, I think. I think it's a good trade for everyone involved, really.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're going to talk about the Bucks and the moves that they made, but before we do that, we are going to take a quick ad break. All right, we are back, and last night while we were all sleeping, Woj's fingers were constantly going, and we had a flurry of trades go out, which
sounds weird.
It does. My phrasing was poor in that sense.
Just keep going, train through it.
Just power through it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what's going to happen tonight. Tonight we're gonna go to bed. This podcast will be recorded and it's gonna get published and it'll go out. And then at midnight tonight, Woj is gonna be like, Harden traded to the Nets and Westbrook's traded to the Wizards. But anyways,
Giannis retires.
Giannis retires in a shocking development. So the Bucks have gone all in trying to get Giannis pieces, trying to make sure that he is going to stay in Milwaukee for the rest of his career. They traded a whole bunch of shit. Eric Bledsoe, George Hill, and I think the final thing was 3 future first-round picks to the Pelicans for Jrue Holiday.
And 2 pick swaps, I think.
Oh my God, and 2 pick swaps. Good Lord. And then they also, with the Sacramento Kings, did a sign and trade. They sent Dante DiVincenzo, Ersan Ilyasova, and DJ Wilson to the Kings for Bogdan Bogdanovic, a guy who we are very high on. We love ourselves some Bogdan. This seems, Natty, to be a terrific recipe for the Bucks, because you now have basically a much better Eric Bledsoe at point guard in Jrue Holiday.
Fact. Yep.
And you have Bogdanovic, who can be that just like spot up 3-point shooter who hangs around the perimeter while also still driving, while also can still get buckets in the paint, but can be another perimeter weapon to help spread that defense out so that Giannis, when driving, has options to pass out to.
Bogdan is one of the best high volume 3-point shooters in the NBA. And he's one of the best playmakers, and he has good size. He is a brilliant addition. We loved him in Sacramento, and the Kings just, never really wanted.
Kings just kinged him away.
Yeah, I mean, so whatever. Let's not talk about that. But
no one improved on the Kings. This is not a Kings trade. This is a purely Bucks trade.
Absolutely. Let's just focus on things that we consider to not be stupid. Adding an incredible outside scorer to a Giannis team is a good idea. He and Chris Middleton together are going to be dynamite out there on the perimeter. Jrue Holiday, according to other players in the NBA, including Kevin Durant, is the best defender at his position. He shoots way better than Eric Bledsoe. So yeah, you're right. That is just a complete upgrade over Bledsoe. It costs a lot, but things cost a lot when you make costly mistakes. They never should have let go of Malcolm Brogdon. They never should have given the contract to Eric Bledsoe. They made some really bad draft decisions, like DJ Wilson, who, even though I love, he's not an impact player. This is sort of erasing the past 4 years of decisions, really, aside from Brook Lopez, and giving Giannis a team that makes sense. They have outside shooting. They have good defense. They have playmaking. This is a better team than the team that, stormed through the East. So if I'm Giannis, I love this. I absolutely love it. But I don't think that the team is done. They're going to be, because of the sign and trade, they're going to be up against the hard cap. So they're going to be a little bit limited in people that they can add. Brolo in the playoffs couldn't play sometimes. I think you're going to need to have a different type of front court player there that you can play. But, think about that down the road. You don't need to have your full team at the beginning of the season. That's what the midseason trade season is for. So right. I think this is great. I love Bogdan there. I really do. I think he's going to be so good with Giannis. He's almost, this is going to sound weird, but he's like a B-level Luka. Like he's a tall playmaker who plays a little bit weird.
High praise there, good sir.
I know. Like Luka's so good, maybe even. But we've loved Bogdan for a long time, and it's like, he's a great distributor. He can shoot from outside. He's
a white European.
There you go, too.
That's the connection right there.
And the fact that now you don't really have to pray for Eric Bledsoe to be good, because you have Jrue Holiday, a guy that can score 40 points in the playoffs. Like, that's just such a load off.
It's
that
never
team is
good
going
to be relying.
Extremely dangerous.
Yeah, it's never good to be relying on Eric Bledsoe to that you need him to do something for this team to succeed. Yeah, so this is, all the pieces are great here. We obviously are super high, and I think the biggest fantasy benefactor is Bogdan Bogdanovic, because the guy is just going to get so many opportunities, so many good open looks, because there is no way that defenses are going to be able to respect him on the perimeter while trying to defend Giannis. Like, either Giannis is going to have one-on-ones against centers driving to the lane, which he's going to win every single time, or defenses are going to have to rotate and collapse, which leaves Bogdanovich wide. It's really hard to say just one part of that name. You have to say the full name. He is a full name player. Yeah, you just can't say Bogdanovich. You got to say Bogdanovich. Anyways, he's just going to be left on the perimeter to shoot. I love Jrue Holiday. He carried my fantasy team to greatness this last year, and I think this move also is fantastic for him because it's perfect for both teams because it helps the Pelicans kind of like fully embrace all of their youth. I think now Lonzo Ball obviously is going to be much more involved unless they move him, ?
Yeah, I mean,
you think so?
I'd still sell while he's like high. Like if he has another year where his shooting only improves a little bit, like that's I'd get the fuck rid of him. But that's also because I feel like you can find fairly competent point guards fairly easily. But whatever, that you're completely right about Jrue. Also, Jrue is going to a better team for where he's at age-wise.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Ingram and Zion are babies. Yeah, totally. And, Giannis is still young, but he's a veteran at this point. I mean, this is his 8th season.
God, is that true?
He was 2013,
dude, basketball fucking ages and like just when they enter the league blow my mind. Yeah. I can't function with them.
It's crazy.
Because oh my God, what is it? Yeah, it's his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, this will be his 8th year. His 8th year.
Absolutely nuts. At 15th pick. The Bucks got better. Here's the thing though. If Bud doesn't change his style of coaching, at least in the playoffs, that team is still going to fucking lose. Like now they have less depth. So which is not to say they shouldn't have done these trades. You should definitely do these trades. You'll be able to find other players. George Hill was one of, if not the most efficient 3-point shooter last year. So that hurts, like you don't want to give up shooting.
Sure.
But like you'd rather have Bogdanovich in a vacuum. So
I have to give a shout out to Jackson Frank at JackFrank_JJF on Twitter, who said, and this is incredible. He said the Bucks are getting rid of their entire bench, so Bud has no choice but to play his starters 48 minutes in the playoffs.
I mean, that's funny. That's
I mean, that's what he's doing. That's what they're doing. That's 100% what they're doing.
Like you just, if Bud doesn't budge, then they have to fire him. Because that's just completely unacceptable. You can't coach that way. You can't be like, yeah, well, this is our system. Like, no, motherfuckers, the playoffs. You don't have a system.
I'm sorry. Why are you not playing your players?
Win. Yeah, totally. So, well, on the other hand, Giannis did get hurt. But all of this is good news for Milwaukee. I assume that they wouldn't have made these moves without Giannis saying, I'll definitely resign if you do this. Or he already told them he'd resign, but maybe not. Maybe this is just balls to the wall. Either way, it's great. And, Sacramento still needs to figure out who they are because they sort of refuse to build around De'Aaron Fox properly. So maybe these are just more assets they can use to actually fundamentally get better. I don't know how they do that, but like if Buddy Hield still isn't allowed to start, then you sort of have to trade him because you can't have that much money on the bench for a team that doesn't make the playoffs.
Right.
So the Kings still have interesting moves to make. But yeah, this is great for it. I mean, New Orleans just now has more options. So why not? Kings ransom.
All right. Before the NBA draft is going to be Wednesday, as you are listening to this. And so we're going to, Natty wrote an article out on fake teams. You should definitely go read it. He has his 7 most intriguing NBA prospects in this draft, ranging all over the draft. You have some lottery picks. You have some guys who are going in the second round. But we're just going to talk about your 4 most interesting prospects. And so why don't you just start us off, Natty? Give me the 4 names, and we'll talk through them. Who are the 4 guys that you're most intrigued about seeing where they go and just their NBA potential careers in this draft?
Well, my favorite player is Devin Vassell. I just think that he is an archetypal 3-and-D guy. I think he's going to be incredibly above average in the NBA. Not an all-star unless he reaches his full potential, but a guy that everybody would like to have on their team, sort of like a Danny Green at his apex, just a dude that you can plug and play. You know, he can play with stars, he can play on the wing, he defends well, he can shoot. He's the guy I want the Pistons to draft. Like, he's not a number one draft pick by any means.
Right.
He just doesn't have that. His ceiling isn't that high unless something drastically changes. But I think he's going to end up being one of the most valuable players in this draft when all is said and done. He's projected, after the 5th pick. Some people have him going like a little bit later, but I would be surprised if he makes it out of the top 10 because everybody wants these wings, right? Mm-hmm. And so him and Sadiq Bey, I think, are two of the safest players in the draft. They're both 3-and-D guys. They would just be such good additions to a lot of these teams that already have stars and are looking for complementary pieces. Like a lot of these teams, now that the lottery is really more like a lottery, like the Minnesota Timberwolves, like they don't need James Wiseman. They're not going to pick him with the number 1 pick. And it seems like from all these mocks and what people are saying, it seems like they're going to go with Anthony Edwards rather than LaMelo Ball, because even if LaMelo Ball has a higher ceiling, if he can't shoot, that doesn't help Big Cat. And Big Cat is the next Giannis-like player who's going to be, capable of requesting a trade. So Minnesota has to do everything they can to try to build a team around him. Having a point guard who can't shoot next to D'Angelo Russell isn't a way to make your team that much better. Like,
yes.
They had Robert Covington, and everyone who listens to this knows how much we love Big Bob. And they don't anymore. So, like, let's get perimeter help. Let's get defense. Let's get scoring. Let's do anything except get a guy who can't shoot. Or get a big who's like not going to be able to play as much so I sort of feel like Anthony Edwards is the only high potential pick that they could possibly make. Let's see, who else do I like? Patrick Williams is a raw 3-and-D guy, but a lot of people like him. He could go top 10. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the teams that we sort of consider smart and good development teams seem to have their eyes on him. A team like the Cavs should absolutely take a wing. Like they shouldn't take a guard or big. They should just take a wing.
You think though? I feel like they have a lot of holes in the backcourt and frontcourt.
And it's like they're
going to take a guard. They're going to take a guard.
Dude, it's like who on that team is untouchable. Like, who are you building around?
It's going to blow everyone's minds when they take a guard.
Yeah, it's a little brutal. I'm sort of wondering, can you package that pick with Kevin Love for something? Like, what's maybe. I mean, I feel like every team should almost trade their pick, but the Hawks are in an interesting situation because they have a lot of youth already. They have stars, but those stars have foibles. They have John Collins, but is he an apex predator like Bam, or like Pascal Siakam? Like, there's still a lot of question marks there aside from Trae Young, I think. So they could do anything. If they wanted to play it safe, they would go with, like Obi Toppin or one of these sort of oversized wings that can really help Trae out on the perimeter. Isaiah Joe I love, but he's not like a top 10 pick probably, but he's one of the best shooters in the draft. He might be the best shooter in the draft. And then there's a guy named Tyrese Halliburton who I just think is fire. And like, I think he would be a good running mate with Trae in Atlanta. I think he would be a pretty good complement to anybody with a good guard who already has a good guard in their backcourt. And I don't know, like if let's say the Wizards actually made that trade.
Love it. I'm here for it.
What would you
I'm going to put
want?
all positive vibes always out there for the Wizards trading a banged up athletic point guard for another banged up athletic point guard.
Right. So yeah, and if you're Bradley Beal, are you like, wait, would I
Wait,
rather play with Westbrook
do I
than
like
Wall?
this or do I not like
Hang
this?
on. So it would be Westbrook, Wall, Rui Hachimura, Thomas Bryant. Oh, the Latvian Laser, if they resign him. Like that's another team that could use, like a perimeter defender at the very least. But if, let's say, like if Wiseman fell, then the Wizards would have to take him because he's probably going to be better than Thomas Bryant anyway. I do sort of feel like Wiseman is going to go to Golden State. It just makes so much sense.
Yeah, that does make
so much sense.
Yep.
Like if they didn't do that, it would be kind of crazy. Like who would they take instead?
I have no idea. No, the Wiseman to Golden State it's the only reason I feel like is unless the Timberwolves take him, but that doesn't make sense either. It just feels like that is a situation where a player who needs to develop his offensive game, who can't, is could be the guy, but for his best development, probably would be best for him to not be the guy right out of the gate. And there's no better team for that. Plus, you just get a young athletic big, which is something that the Warriors have kind of rotated through. Now, that also could play into it in that the Warriors have had so much success with rotating their bigs and, with kind of getting, they like resurrected JaVale McGee's career. Can't forget about that. And so they could be something where they don't see that position as worth the second overall pick. But this draft is such a crapshoot that it's like, go get your guy and see what happens.
Right. If Anthony Edwards is not taken number 1 overall, then the Warriors have the option to either get a big, which they sort of feel are fungible, or they can get a guy who might be able to turn into an offensive force. And then at that point, you're like, okay, well, we have this kid and we have Wiggins. Like, what can we do with these two assets? Should we keep them? Should we combo them to get something better? That would give them more options, maybe. So maybe that is the smarter thing to do, depending. But I just sort of feel like the money you're going to spend on a big in free agency is probably better spent on a guy who could end up being the best player in the draft. Like this, and the Warriors aren't going to be in this position again for a long time.
Right.
So you either trade the pick to try to get a haul. If you trade the number 2 with Wiggins, that should get you something really good. Or you go, you shoot for the fences. But like LaMelo doesn't make any sense there. So addition by subtraction, or it just means that like Wiseman's the only guy that really makes sense for them.
I would agree. All right, Natty, before we go, do you have any like one bold or inclining as to what's going to happen in the draft? Do you have anyone who you're just like, man, I hope this happens, or I think that this is going to happen?
That's funny because I had a similar question for you, and Perfect. I kind of want to turn the tables. What do you think this is more likely? The Celtics use all 3 of their first round picks, or they don't because they traded multiple.
They're trading those picks. Quick little breaking news. The Hawks are in play to get Gordon Hayward. So we'll see what happens there. Gordon Hayward for Trae Young. You heard it here first.
That's funny.
That's what's happening. I don't think that Danny Ainge is going to stay put at all 3 picks and use all 3 picks. I feel like he's going to package them. I've heard a lot of rumors that they are super into, and I'm going to absolutely butcher his name, but Onyeka Okongwu. Did I get that?
Oh, yeah. Okongwu?
Okongwu.
Yeah, he's great. He's super good.
And so they could package 1 or package 2 or I don't know if you would need all 3 first round picks, but they would package 2 of them to move up in the draft to get him. I've heard that before. So just given Danny Ainge's Trader Danny's track record, I have a hard time believing that they are going to stay pat at all 3 and pick at those spots. But that also would be the most Danny Ainge thing to do, is to just be like, no, we're going to completely turn the tables and go against all expectation.
Yeah, if they're shopping Hayward, and that sort of suggests to me that maybe they're also shopping Kemba, then
Which
who the
is
hell
really
knows what could happen.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
Hayward-
Kemba's an
Hayward is
undersized guard.
gone.
I mean, even when that
Right,
trade happened,
right.
it was like,
I
yeah,
know.
but he's also, under 6 feet tall. So
Kemba, I mean, Hayward's gone. Hayward, they pushed his time to opt in, opt out till Thursday, which to me just means that they're trading him in the next like 48 hours. And Kemba, it's sad that undersized guard who was unable to stay healthy gets traded after 1 year in Boston, despite the fact that he was like loved in the locker room and loved by Boston fans, or at least loved by this Boston fan. Then, but you understand that. I mean, it's a business.
And, you can be as good as you want in the regular season. When the playoffs hit,
Yeah.
your weaknesses get exposed. And it is a weakness having an undersized guard. This is the problem that Atlanta is going to face for the next 10 years with Ice Tray. And it's why they need to try to surround him with capable defenders, because he's just not going to be able to get at these dudes.
Yep.
So,
You got to do the Golden State Warriors. You got to pair Steph Curry with Klay Thompson. You got to find Trae Young his Klay Thompson.
And it's not like it's impossible. I mean, Gordon Hayward 3 years ago was a 2-guard, small forward combo. So life happens fast in the NBA. All of, who knows where Bledsoe's going to be in 2 months' time? Who knows where any of these play? Who knows where Derrick Rose will be? Who knows where Blake Griffin will be? Who knows where everyone on the Bulls will be? One team I haven't really heard a lot about recently is Dallas, and Dallas always does something. They're going to do something.
Yeah.
So there's still going to be a lot of moves made, but one thing that has been shown is that you can play a new NBA style while still being huge. The Lakers showed that. They're going to try to repeat it. And everybody else is going to have to wake up to the fact that basketballers are still huge motherfuckers. And even if you have a dynamo at the point, if he's under 6'2", that's always going to be a problem in the playoffs. Always.
Agreed. All right. Well, there you go. That's all we got for you this week. Make sure you subscribe to the Fate Teams podcast wherever you get your podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That is how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy football and fantasy baseball podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at the Long Two Podcast. Make sure you do so. Natty, until next week, stay safe.
You do the same. Be healthy, everybody.